Hey everybody. Today we're going to talk about what was invented by accident. And so, let's begin. Velveeta cheese was a byproduct that was considered waste. Someone noticed that factory workers were dipping bread into that vat of byproduct during lunchtime. From there, Velveeta was born. Also, margarine was originally developed as supplemental chicken feed, but various recipes kept killing chickens. So, it was repurposed for human consumption. Post-its. They were looking for a strong glue and produced a weak one, but the secretaries of the inventors pointed out that it was ideal for making removable notes. These were also tested for general use in the building where the glue was first created. The story goes that the team who created these put a pad on every desk and waited. Once the pads were used up by the people who had them show up on their desk, the demand for more was great. Turning an oops into a big win. And now we have knockoff post-its that don't stick at all. And some that glue themselves to surfaces so hard they can strip paint. And I need you to stuck in my channel because there's going to be a lot of nice stuff. Subscribe and like. And the sun will shine in your life, my friend. Probably cheese. My dad's go-to small talk line for like 5 years in the 90s was, "I wonder who the first person to eat cheese was. Must have been pretty hungry." Remember that the gene that many people have to be able to drink milk evolved long after the development of fermented dairy, yogurt, cheese, etc. So somebody had to drink milk and get sick. Someone else had to think, I wonder what would happen if we let it rot for a while, and voila, Proto-Indo-Europeans were able to take over a good chunk of the world by living off their horse's milk. Artificial dyes, food coloring. The chemist, William Henry Pelkin, was trying to make artificial quinine for treating malaria. He got artificial lavender dye instead. Penicillin. Alexander Fleming came back to his lab to find a mold had gotten onto one of his bacterial dishes. He noticed the mold had killed the bacteria.
Post-its. They were looking for a strong glue and produced a weak one, but the secretaries of the inventors pointed out that it was ideal for making removable notes. These were also tested for general use in the building where the glue was first created. The story goes that the team who created these put a pad on every desk and waited. Once the pads were used up by the people who had them show up on their desk, the demand for more was great. Turning an oops into a big win.
Bandaging wounds. A French field surgeon had run out of coal to heat up his cauterizing irons, and all he had was strips of cloth, so he bandaged wounds instead of burning them. The bandaged patients had much better outcomes. Radioactivity. A French scientist put a rock next to some photographic film, and when he developed the film he found it has been ruined. He soon found he could replicate the effect. X-rays. Roentgen was fooling around with cathode ray tubes and decided to put a piece of metal in the path of the electron beam. And got very interesting radiation coming off the metal. The resulting radiation penetrated flesh, but not bone. The diode. Thomas Edison tried to use a wire coming out of the top of a light bulb to hold up parts of his light bulb, but when it was on, current flowed from the filament to the wire, even thought they weren't connected. He patented it, but others realized this would create a one-way electricity gate. Vulcanized rubber. Goodyear accidentally dropped sulfur into a rubber compound he was trying to develop. He found that the resulting rubber was both flexible and melt resistant, which meant it could be poured into molds and retain its shape indefinitely. Gun cotton. A chemist spilled some chemicals and used a cloth to wipe them up. He put the cloth near the fire to dry, only to see it burst into flames and instantly vaporize. He realized he had an ammunition-quality explosive. Saw the penicillin and was hoping Viagra would pop up too. Pfizer created a drug to treat hypertension and angina through vasodilation. It didn't work very well and was a bit of a flop. The vasodilation and increased blood flow also had the inconvenient side effect of inducing erections during trials. Fortunately, Pfizer found a use for it and rebranded the happy accident as an erectile dysfunction drug that has since blown up quite a bit. Viagra was a bit of a flop. Penicillin. But it wasn't invented, just discovered by accident. Had he been using modern-day lab protocols, it would never have happened. Often described as a careless lab technician, Fleming returned from a 2-week vacation to find that a mold had developed on an accidentally contaminated Staphylococcus culture plate. Upon examination of the mold, he noticed that the culture prevented the growth of staphylococci. Dude went on holiday and accidentally saved a few hundred millions lives. Superglue was invented during WW2 by accident. The inventor was trying to make clear gun scopes. So far in this thread I've seen 3 different things they were trying to invent when they accidentally made superglue. I love how the video game character Kirby was created and how he became his own series. Originally, Kirby was created to be sort of a test dummy that would get a more detailed design later on, but the designers ended up falling in love with him as is and kept him as he was. The franchise reached its 30th anniversary this year, and it's one of Nintendo's strongest properties to this day. Speaking of difficulty curves. In the arcade game Space Invaders, the aliens would move faster the fewer of them there were. This was due to hardware limitations of the time creepers from Minecraft were once badly proportioned pigs. Instead of being deleted, they were retextured, colored dark green and black, and given some gunpowder. MDMA, scientist we trying to invent an anticoagulant. Basically all of the classes of drugs were found by accident. Mainly because scientists couldn't effectively see inside the skull until the 21st century. Some artificial sweeteners too. Believe it or not, gunpowder. Some Chinese scientists were trying to create fire bombs and made this powder-type substance that just exploded in their face instead. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it initially thought to have some sort of healing properties and used as a remedy for various medical conditions and diseases by the Chinese? It was Chinese alchemists trying to turn different metals into gold. The more they tampered with and experimented with different variations of different chemicals metals, the more they figured out. But it was believed they could both find the fountain of youth so to speak and turn elements into gold through a process of transmutation. The same process was thought to be used to find elements with healing properties. All that to be said, they found through experimenting that some of the chemicals they mixed would be highly flammable or outright explosive, only they didn't know how to use it right away for anything worthwhile. It was decades before they harnessed it into grenades or barrels for projectiles. Just to clarify, Western alchemists and Eastern alchemists had fundamentally different goals, alchemist being a loose term for PPL in both cultures, randomly mixing things TGT and all that. The idea of Western alchemy was to turn lead into gold or just random things into gold. While in particular, Chinese alchemy was about creating the pill of immortality. They aren't the same even though they're both alchemy. Gunpowder was created from one Chinese alchemist in the service of the emperor, randomly throwing things into a pot. Lo and behold, it exploded. Special effects for a while, it was assumed you had to keep the camera rolling through a whole scene, also easier to splice the movie together. A director, forgot his name, was filming a bus when his camera jammed. By the time he fixed it, the bus had left and there was a bench right behind it. When they looked at the film during editing, it looked like the bus had magically turned into a bench. Vulcanized rubber. Charles Goodyear came up with it by accident. Without it we don't have tires, gaskets, seals, soles of shoes, hoses, shock absorbers and hell of a lot more. Pretty much changed the whole world. LSD. Albert Hoffman riding that bicycle high as hell. And to figure out what made home feel that way, he thought it might have been chloroform, so he huffed some and woke up hours later and was like, well, that wasn't it. Chocolate chip cookies. In 1930, Ruth Wakefield made them by accident. While making a batch of chocolate cookies, she ran out of baker's chocolate. She decided to use a slab of semi-sweet chocolate, break it into pieces and mix it into the dough, hoping it would melt into the mixture while it baked. But the pieces of chocolate stayed in place. It's crazy to think chocolate chip cookies were invented in 1930. Damn. Yes, chocolate chip cookies are only 92 years old. That's insane. There are people alive today who were born into a world with no chocolate chip cookies. One of the first people to ever eat a chocolate chip cookie as a child could still be alive. Mickey Mouse is older than chocolate chip cookies, bro. Mickey is older than toilet paper without splinters. Microwave ovens. Story says some microwave scientist noticed a candy bar in his shirt pocket had partially melted, and presto. The Amana Radarange is born. He had his lunch sitting on a workbench between a radar system and a receiver to test it. It was at Raytheon and they spun off the Amana Radar Range Division. I thought the microwave was found useful for defrosting chickens. Hamsters. Specifically hamsters, they were deep freezing for cryogenics research. And the bonkers thing was that it worked. They got to the point where they could freeze hamsters solid almost indefinitely and then warm them up with microwaves and bring them back to life more than half the time with no major health problems. Sadly, the technology didn't scale up for anything larger, like a human. But that was actually before and separate from the incident with the chocolate bar melting, which actually led to the invention of the commercial microwave oven. Here. You know, I actually wonder what humans in early civilization did to discover things like alcohol. Did they just let things rot for a while then go, hey Jerry, I'm bored, wanna drink some of that spoiled potato for fun? Probably more like, hey, I'm about to die of starvation, this rotten food must surely be better than death. Ah foo, dying would have been better, the first person to have a hangover. Potato chips. I thought the story was that some chef produced it as a joke when one of his restaurant's customers kept asking for thinner French fries. So he prepared a batch that was so thin that the customer would be annoyed. Instead, the customer was delighted and potato chips were born. Ha 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 ha. That sounds awesome. You like that now? Yeah, thanks. Wait, what? When your snark inadvertently pays off. Tea bags? From what I've read, they were created by an American tea importer who put loose leaf tea in silk pouches and sent them out as samples. The string attached had the name of the tea company at the end. The recipients didn't know they were supposed to open the pouches and use the tea leaves as usual and instead used them as we do today. It wasn't until they started receiving requests for more of the pouches that they realized there was a market for them. Hot dog sausages were invented when a German butcher used to feed his dog with the rest of his butcher shop's meat. He was curious and combined the rest meat and cooked it, then he created the first sausage. Then started to sell the sausage with sauce, which was a success, but there were a lot of complaints because clients warmed and stained with sauce when they touched the cooked sausage, so he called his stepbrother, who was a baker, and combined the sausage with bread. Oh, this video has come to an end. If you want more such cool stories, then go to one of the many following videos.